At my father's funeral, my phone buzzed with a message that froze my blood. Don't bury me. I'm still breathing. What happened next shattered my world and exposed secrets I never expected. I stood at the entrance of the church, my black dress clinging heavily against my skin as though it carried the weight of every sorrow I had ever known. The air inside was heavy with incense and grief, and yet, beneath all of that, a strange stillness pressed against my chest. Funerals are supposed to bring closure. They are supposed to mark the end of pain. But as I looked at my father's casket at the front, draped in white lilies and roses, I felt a gnawing unease clawing at my stomach. Something inside whispered that this day was not what it seemed. Murmurs filled the pews. Relatives, neighbors, and old friends shuffled in, dabbing their eyes with tissues, whispering memories of the man who had been so respected in the community. My father, David Reynolds, was a figure larger than life, known for his sharp mind, his fierce protectiveness of family, and his uncanny ability to keep secrets. That last part had always unsettled me, even as a child. He carried stories in his silence, shadows in his gaze, and when he died suddenly from what we were told was a heart attack, the news spread like wildfire, leaving us shocked and broken. Tried to focus on the pastor's words, but my eyes were fixed on the casket. It looked too still, too final, as though daring me to question what lay inside. My hands trembled as I clasped the program, scanning the printed order of service, my father's smiling photograph on the cover, staring back at me. He had looked alive there, so alive that the lifelessness of this gathering felt surreal. Then, as I lowered my head, I felt it, a soft vibration against my palm. My phone buzzed inside my clutch bag. At first, I ignored it. Who would dare text during a funeral? But then it buzzed again, insistent, impossible to ignore. My breath caught. I slid the phone out and shielded it under my lap, careful not to draw attention. My eyes widened as I read the message on the screen. Don't bury me. I'm still breathing. The words carved themselves into my brain. My heart pounded so loudly, I feared the entire church would hear it. My throat tightened, my chest constricted, and for a long second I forgot how to breathe. The message was from an unknown number. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drop the phone and run, but my body froze. My father was lying in that casket. I had seen his body, pale and lifeless, or so I thought. Had I been wrong? Was this some cruel trick, a heartless prank? I read the message again, my fingers trembling over the screen. My vision blurred with tears. The words were not random. They were urgent, personal. They were the kind of words only someone desperate, trapped, and terrified would send. I turned to my right, where my brother Michael sat, his face grim, his eyes fixed on the casket. He had always been the stoic one, the logical one, and I knew if I showed him the text he would dismiss it as a scam or a cruel joke. But something in my gut told me this was not a joke. My father had once told me that if anything ever happened to him, I should trust my instincts over everything else. The pastor droned on about peace and eternal rest, but all I could hear was the echo of those words in my head. Don't bury me. I'm still breathing. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Trust no one. Not even her. My eyes flicked toward the front row where my mother sat, veiled in black lace, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I stared at her trembling hands, her fragile frame, and the sorrow carved into her face. Was the message implying her? Could my own mother be hiding something from me? A cold sweat broke across my forehead. I felt dizzy. The world around me blurred as the choir began to sing. Their voices rose like a wave, but I could barely hear them. My mind was consumed by questions. Was my father alive? If so, who had sealed him in that casket, and why? I leaned forward slightly, gripping the pew in front of me to steady myself. The wooden edge dug into my palms, grounding me in the chaos spinning inside my head. The phone buzzed once more, and this time the message made my blood run cold. Get me out before it's too late. My hands shook violently. My breath came out in shallow gasps. I wanted to run to the front, to tear the lid off that casket and see for myself. But the eyes of the entire congregation weighed me down. If I caused a scene, if I was wrong, I would look like a madwoman. But if I did nothing, and my father truly was alive in there, then this funeral was nothing more than a slow burial of a living man. The service pressed on, hymns, prayers, condolences, each second stretched into an eternity. My phone burned in my hand, and every fiber of my being screamed at me to act. Yet fear anchored me to my seat. Finally, the pallbearers prepared to move the casket. My stomach dropped as I realized that once it left the church, it would be lowered into the ground. Every second mattered. I rose from my seat suddenly, startling those around me. My mother turned, her tear-streaked face twisting into confusion. "What are you doing?" she whispered sharply. "I need to see him," I muttered, my voice barely audible, but firm. Gasps rippled through the pews as I stepped into the aisle, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The pastor faltered, his words cutting short as all eyes fell on me. I felt the weight of judgment pressing from every direction, but I did not stop. I approached the casket, my heart slamming against my ribs, my fingers curled against the polished wood as I stared at it, trembling. With a sharp breath, I pushed against the lid. One of the pallbearers stepped forward quickly. "Miss, you can't open it," I demanded, my voice breaking with urgency. Now, the church fell into a stunned silence. My mother rose from her seat, her face pale with alarm. "Stop this nonsense," she cried. "You're embarrassing us. He's gone." I shook my head violently. "No, I need to see him. I need to be sure." Whispers spread across the room like wildfire. The pastor exchanged uncertain glances with the pallbearers, but none dared defy me. My hand trembled as I reached for the lid, my chest tightening with every breath. Just as my fingers grazed the edge, my phone buzzed again. The final message flashed on the screen. "Hurry, air is running out." The silence inside the church was suffocating. Dozens of eyes bored into me as I stood at the casket, my hand trembling over the polished lid. My mother's voice cracked through the heavy stillness. "Stop this at once, Emma. He's gone. Let him rest." Her tone was sharp, almost commanding, and it struck me with a force I had never felt from her before. She was always soft-spoken, always gentle, but now her words carried authority, almost desperation. It only fueled the fire in my chest. "No," I said firmly, my voice trembling but determined. "I have to see him, right now." The pallbearers hesitated, unsure if they should intervene. The pastor stepped forward, hands raised in an attempt to de-escalate. "Emma, grief can make us feel things that are not there. I assure you, your father is at peace." Peace. The word clanged in my head like a cruel joke. My phone still vibrated in my hand. Those final words screaming at me. "Hurry, air is running out." I swallowed hard, gathering strength I did not know I had. "Either you open this casket, or I will do it myself." The room buzzed with whispers. I could see distant relatives shaking their heads, muttering about hysteria, about how I was falling apart. But I no longer cared about their judgment. This was my father. If there was even a fraction of truth in those texts, I could not risk silence. One of the pallbearers, a tall man with broad shoulders, glanced at the pastor. After a long pause, the pastor sighed heavily, resigned. "Very well. Let her look, but prepare yourself, child. What you see may not bring comfort." My heart pounded as the pallbearers gently set the casket down. The hinges creaked as they unlocked the lid. Every muscle in my body tensed. My throat was dry, my palms slick with sweat. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the lid was lifted. Gasps rippled through the congregation as the face of my father was revealed. He lay there, dressed in a crisp black suit, his skin pale, his hands folded neatly across his chest. To the others, he looked like a man at rest. But I leaned closer, searching desperately for signs of life. My eyes darted to his chest, watching for the faintest rise and fall. I held my breath, straining to hear anything, any whisper of air, any beat of a heart. My mother's voice rang behind me, brittle with strain. "He is gone. Let him go, Emma." But then I saw it, a flicker, a twitch so small I thought at first I had imagined it. His finger, the smallest movement against the fabric of his sleeve. My breath hitched. My knees nearly buckled. "He's alive," I whispered, my voice barely audible, then louder, stronger, filled with urgency. "He's alive." The room erupted into chaos. Some people gasped in disbelief, others protested angrily. My brother Michael rushed forward, his face contorted with shock and rage. "What are you talking about? Stop this madness, Emma." But I pointed frantically. "Look." His hand moved. I saw it. "He's not dead." The pallbearers leaned in uncertainly. One shook his head, muttering that it was just a muscle spasm, a trick of the body after death. But I knew what I had seen. And then, as though the universe conspired to prove me right, my father's lips parted slightly. A faint sound escaped, Shallow, strangled gasp of air. The church fell silent again. Every head turned toward the casket. My father's chest rose ever so slightly, then fell. "Oh my God," someone whispered in the back. Panic surged through me. "Help him, he's suffocating," I screamed. The pallbearers recoiled in shock, unsure what to do. Michael grabbed my arm roughly, pulling me back. "Emma, stop. You're making a fool of yourself. This is grief talking. He's gone. He's gone." I yanked my arm free, my anger boiling. "Are you blind? He is breathing. He is alive. Look at him." The pastor stumbled back, his face pale. "This cannot be. This is impossible." But the truth was undeniable now. My father's chest heaved, again, shallow but real. His eyelids fluttered weakly, as though he was fighting to open them. "Call an ambulance," I shouted, my voice cracked with desperation. Now, the congregation erupted into frantic motion. Someone dialed emergency services, others crowded around, gasping, crying, praying. Yet, amidst the chaos, my mother stood frozen, her face ashen, her eyes locked on my father with a strange, unreadable expression. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, trembling not with shock but with something darker. "No, this cannot be happening." Her words pierced me. They were not the words of relief or joy a wife should feel at the sight of her husband alive. They were words of dread, words of someone who did not want him back. My stomach churned with nausea. Questions spiraled in my head. What did she know? Why was she so afraid? The paramedics arrived minutes later, pushing through the stunned crowd. They checked his pulse, their faces tightening with shock as they confirmed what I already knew. "He's alive, weak, but alive. We need to move him immediately." They lifted him out of the casket, laying him onto a stretcher. His skin was clammy, his breaths shallow, but unmistakably he was there, clinging to life. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived because in that moment, I caught my mother's eyes, cold, calculating, terrified. She turned away quickly, dabbing her face with a handkerchief, pretending to cry. But I had seen behind the mask, something was terribly wrong, that as they wheeled my father out of the church, my phone buzzed once more. My hands shook violently as I lifted it, expecting another message from the same number, but this time, it was different. "You were not supposed to open it. Now you are in danger too." The blood drained from my face. My knees nearly gave out. The words blurred in front of me as my pulse raced. I stumbled after the stretcher, pushing through the crowd, my mind spinning with terror. Who had sent this message? If my father was alive, who wanted him dead? And why warn me now, unless I had just crossed into the same deadly secret that nearly buried him alive? Michael grabbed my shoulder as we exited the church, his voice a harsh whisper. "What the hell is going on, Emma? Who are you talking to? What do you know?" I shook my head, unable to speak. The paramedics loaded my father into the ambulance. His hand twitched again, this time curling slightly, as though reaching for something. For me, I climbed into the ambulance beside him, ignoring Michael's protests. My mother stayed behind, her face hidden under her veil, her body trembling in a way I no longer trusted. As the ambulance doors slammed shut, the phone buzzed again. A final message glowed on the screen. "He knows the truth. Protect him, or you both die." The sirens wailed, drowning out the screams of my mind. My father's eyelids fluttered again, and for a fleeting second, his eyes met mine. In that fragile gaze, I saw both a plea and a warning. This funeral was never meant to bury the dead. It was meant to silence the living. And now, the target was not only my father, it was me. The sirens wailed as the ambulance tore through the streets, its flashing lights painting streaks of red against the windows. I sat pressed against the corner bench, gripping my father's cold hand as though my touch alone could tether him to life. The paramedics worked furiously, adjusting tubes, checking monitors, murmuring medical jargon I could not understand, but I could see the truth on their faces: shock, confusion, unease. This was not a man they expected to find alive. They had walked into a funeral prepared for nothing more than formality. Now, they were fighting to keep a man breathing who should never have been placed in a casket. My father's eyelids fluttered again. His lips moved faintly, a dry rasp escaping his throat. I leaned in close, desperate to hear, but one of the paramedics pushed me back. "Please, let us work." I nodded, my chest tight with frustration. But I never let go of his hand. If he slipped again, If he fell back into whatever nightmare had nearly buried him alive, I wanted him to know I was here. The phone buzzed in my lap. I froze. My heart lurched. I pulled it out and saw another message from the unknown number. We'll try to finish what they started. Trust no one in that church. A chill swept through me. My eyes darted to the rear window. The funeral cars followed behind us, a line of black weaving through the city. Somewhere back there was my mother, sitting stiffly with her veil hiding her face, and Michael, my brother, who had dismissed everything, who had tried to stop me from opening the casket. Was it possible? Could both of them be involved? I bit my lip until I tasted blood. The thought made me sick. Yet the warning echoed in my head. Trust no one. The paramedics stabilized my father's breathing with oxygen, though it was faint and shallow. One of them shook his head in disbelief. I do not understand this. He has vital signs, but barely. He should not have been declared dead. Declared dead. The phrase stabbed me. Who had declared it? Who signed the papers, prepared the body, closed the casket? Who pushed for such haste? The ambulance screeched to a halt at the hospital. Doors flew open, and they wheeled him out. I stumbled after them, clutching my phone in one hand and my father's trembling fingers in the other. Cameras flashed as the hospital entrance swarmed with people. News had spread faster than I imagined. A man pronounced dead, alive at his own funeral. The world was watching, but beneath the chaos, I knew someone was furious that their plan had failed. Inside the emergency ward, they rushed him into a private room. I tried to follow, but a nurse blocked my way. We need space to work. Please wait outside. No, I snapped, my voice raw. I am his daughter. I stay. The nurse hesitated, then relented with a sigh. I slid into the corner of the room, pressing my back against the wall as they surrounded my father. Machines beeped, monitors glowed, tubes snaked across his frail body. He looked nothing like the man I remembered, strong, commanding, unshakable. Now he was fragile, teetering on the edge of life. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, one of the doctors turned to me. His face was grim. He is alive, but barely. Whatever happened to him, his oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. He should not have survived this long. It is a miracle, or a nightmare that someone tried to orchestrate. The doctor leaned closer, lowering his voice. This does not happen by accident. He was not dead. He was sedated. He was buried alive. My stomach twisted. My legs nearly gave out. Sedated. The doctor nodded firmly. Someone wanted him to appear dead. Someone planned this. The truth hit me like a storm. Someone close, someone trusted, had orchestrated this. My mind flashed to my mother's strange reaction in the church, her refusal to let me open the casket, her words dripping not with grief but fear, and then Michael, his resistance, his anger. Was it because he was protecting me from humiliation, or because he was protecting a deadly secret? I clutched my phone as if it were the only thing tethering me to reality. The messages burned into my brain. Do not trust her, protect him. You are in danger too. My father stirred again, his lips moving faintly. I darted to his side, ignoring the protests of the medical staff. I leaned close, my ear inches from his mouth. His voice was barely a whisper, raspy and broken, but I caught fragments. Not accident betrayed, trust no one. She knows. His eyes rolled back, and the monitors screamed warnings. Nurses pushed me aside as they fought to stabilize him. Stumbled back, tears burning my eyes. His words rattled in my chest like thunder. Betrayed. She knows. I turned, and there in the doorway stood my mother. Her veil was gone, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes sharp as steel. Behind her loomed Michael, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. Emma, my mother said softly, her tone chillingly calm. Step away from him. You are making things worse. I shook my head violently. No, he is alive because of me. He is breathing because I refused to listen to you. Her eyes narrowed. You do not understand. You are only putting yourself in danger. Come with me now. My pulse raced. What are you talking about? What do you know? Michael stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. Emma, listen to her, please. You are not safe here. The words only fueled my terror. Not safe here. Then where was safe? My phone buzzed again. My hand shook as I lifted it. Get out of the hospital. They will silence him here. I froze. My blood turned to ice. I looked at my mother, at Michael, at the cold, sterile walls of the hospital. Suddenly, I realized this place was no sanctuary. It was another trap. I backed away slowly, clutching my father's hand one last time before whispering, "I will protect you." Then I slipped out the side door of the room, ignoring their shouts. My heart pounded as I darted down the hallway, my mind racing with questions that only my father could answer, if he survived long enough to tell me. As I pushed through the hospital doors into the night, my phone buzzed once more. Meet me where it all began. Midnight, alone. The street lamps flickered above me, casting long shadows. I stared at the message, my breath ragged. Where it all began. The only place that came to mind was my father's study, the one room in the house he always kept locked, the place filled with secrets I was never meant to see. If I wanted the truth, I would have to walk straight into the darkness that had tried to bury him alive. The night air felt heavy as I left the hospital. My shoes slapped against the pavement, each step echoing with urgency. I could not shake the last message glowing on my phone screen. Meet me where it all began. Midnight, alone, where it all began. There was only one place those words could mean: my father's study. That room had always been off limits. Growing up, I had pressed my ear against the heavy oak door, listening to the scratch of his pen, the low murmur of his voice during phone calls, the occasional thud of drawers being slammed shut. It was his sanctuary, and he protected it like a fortress. Not even my mother dared to cross the threshold. I quickened my pace, clutching my coat tighter around me as the city thinned into the familiar streets of my childhood. The family house loomed in the distance, its tall windows glowing faintly. Shadows shifted inside, though I could not tell if it was imagination or reality. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Do not trust them. They will try to follow you. Enter the study from the back. I glanced over my shoulder. A black car had been trailing me at a cautious distance. My stomach knotted. The windows were tinted, the driver hidden. I picked up my pace, then veered suddenly down a side street. The car hesitated, then rolled past, pretending to lose interest. But I knew better. By the time I reached the house, the clock tower nearby chimed once, 11 o'clock. I had 1 hour before midnight. My fingers trembled as I fished out the spare key I had hidden years ago under the garden stone. I slipped inside through the back door, the air thick with silence. The house smelled the same: polished wood, old books, faint perfume from my mother's endless collection. But something about it felt different now, more sinister. I moved carefully down the hall, every creak of the floorboards making my pulse race. The study door waited at the end, tall and imposing, its brass handle glinting faintly. Locked, as always. I tried the handle anyway. No movement. My father had never trusted keys in obvious places, but I remembered the glint of a tiny lockbox hidden in his wardrobe when I was a child. I darted upstairs, slipping into his bedroom. The wardrobe doors groaned as I pushed them open. I reached high into the corner shelf, and my fingers brushed cold metal. The box. My heart hammered as I pulled it down and flipped it open. Inside lay an old-fashioned key, heavy and ornate. My breath caught. Back downstairs, I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a groan, and the door opened slowly, as though the house itself resented my intrusion. The study smelled of dust and secrets. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, crammed with books and files. The massive desk in the center was cluttered with papers, some yellowed with age, others fresh. A faint lamp glowed, though I had no memory of leaving electricity on. Someone had been here recently. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. My eyes roamed the room, drinking in details I had only imagined. The safe hidden behind a framed map, the filing cabinets locked tight, the drawer left slightly open, as if someone had rifled through it in haste. Then I saw it, a leather-bound journal lying on the desk, its cover cracked and worn. My father's handwriting sprawled across the first page. My hands shook as I opened it. "Trust is the most dangerous currency," it began. I flipped through, scanning entries, filled with names, dates, transactions. At first it looked like business records, but soon the words grew darker. References to bribes, hidden accounts, meetings in shadowed places. He had uncovered something vast, something powerful. Then one line froze me in place. "Michael is not ready. He does not understand the danger. If she finds out, everything will be lost." I gasped. She. It had to mean my mother. Before I could read further, the floor creaked behind me. I spun around, clutching the journal to my chest. Michael stood in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something between fear and anger. "Emma," he said, his voice strained. "What are you doing here?" I stepped back, my hand tightening on the journal. "I could ask you the same thing. How did you know I would be here?" He swallowed hard. "Because I followed you. You should not be here. You do not understand what you are walking into." I shook my head. "No, Michael. You are the one who does not understand. Father was never dead. He was buried alive. Someone tried to kill him. And I think you know who." His face twisted in anguish. "It is not that simple." "Then explain," I demanded, my voice breaking. "Explain why our father wrote about her. Explain why he warned me with his dying breath. Explain why you tried to stop me at the funeral." Michael's jaw tightened. "Because you were going to expose us before we were ready." Us, the word felt like poison on my tongue. "Are you saying you are part of this?" He shook his head violently. "No, not like that. I was trying to protect you. If you keep digging, you will end up just like him." I raised the journal. "This is proof. Whatever he uncovered, it is in here, and I am not stopping until I know the truth." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed again. My hand trembled as I read the new message. "He is lying. Do not trust him. Midnight is almost here. Leave now." I looked up. Michael's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. "Who keeps messaging you?" he demanded. I backed away, clutching both the journal and the phone. "Someone who wants me alive. Unlike you." His face darkened. "You do not know what you are saying." The clock struck 12. The sound echoed through the house like a funeral bell. And then the window shattered. A brick crashed onto the study floor. Glass sprang across the desk. I screamed, stumbling back. Michael lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "We have to go, now." The phone buzzed again, glowing with a final warning. "Run, they found you." I wrenched free from Michael's grip, clutching the journal like a lifeline. For one terrible heartbeat, I did not know who the enemy was, my brother standing in front of me, or the unseen figures closing in from outside. The truth was about to explode, and I was caught in the center of it. The crash of the windows still echoed through the study, as shards of glass glittered across the carpet like scattered diamonds. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the sound of hurried footsteps outside. My chest tightened with terror. Whoever had sent those messages was right. They had found us. Michael grabbed my wrist again. His grip was strong, his face twisted with urgency. "We need to move, now." I yanked my hand free, holding the leather-bound journal close. "You are not dragging me anywhere until you tell me the truth. Who is out there? Who sent them?" "There is no time," he hissed. He reached for the lamp on the desk, twisted the cord sharply, and yanked it free from the wall. The room plunged into darkness, save for the faint glow of the moon through the broken window. I could hear them now. Voices outside, low, commanding, moving closer. The crunch of boots against gravel. My pulse pounded in my ears. Michael pushed me toward the side door of the study, through the garden, quickly. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. Yet the pounding footsteps outside grew louder, closer. A shadow appeared beyond the jagged hole in the glass. I made my choice. I darted through the side door, the journal pressed tight against my chest. Michael followed close behind. We slipped into the garden, the overgrown hedges shrouding us in darkness. I crouched low, gasping for breath, listening as the front door of the house burst open. Men stormed inside, their voices carried through the night, sharp and decisive. "Check every room, find it, not him, not her." They were looking for something. My father's journal. I tightened my hold on the book. They could not have it. Michael pulled me deeper into the shadows, his breath ragged. "Stay quiet. Do not move until I say." I glared at him through the dark. "Why should I trust you? You knew this was coming, did you not?" He shook his head fiercely. "No. I only knew Father was involved in something dangerous. I tried to stop you from opening the casket because once you pulled him back into this, it was too late for any of us to walk away." The front door slammed again. More voices. More boots. The house trembled under their weight. Michael's eyes darted toward the far end of the garden. "There is a gate behind the shed. We can slip out that way, but you need to follow me and not argue." The journal felt like it was burning in my hands. The words my father had written echoed in my mind. Trust is the most dangerous currency. If Michael was right, then my next step mattered more than anything. We crouched low and moved along the hedge, each rustle of leaves sounding like thunder in my ears. The men inside the house shouted to one another, overturning furniture, slamming doors. Nothing here. Check upstairs. Find the book. I froze. Michael grabbed my arm again, pulling me forward. Move, Emma. We slipped behind the shed. The gate loomed ahead, rusted but intact. He pushed it open with a groan, and for a heartbeat I felt the rush of relief. Then a beam of light cut through the darkness. Stop right there. Asterisk, a man's voice, hard and commanding. The glare of a flashlight blinded me. I shielded my eyes, clutching the journal tighter. Michael raised his hands slowly. Two figures stepped into the garden, both dressed in dark coats, their faces half hidden. Guns gleamed faintly in their hands. My stomach dropped. The taller one stepped forward. Give us the book. Asterisk, Michael shifted slightly in front of me. You do not know what you are dealing with. Walk away while you can. The man laughed coldly. You think we are here to negotiate? He raised the gun higher. Hand it over, or she dies. Or she dies. I gasped, my arms tightening around the journal. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. This belonged to my father. If you want it, tell me why. Tell me what is in it that is worth killing for. The man's smile was cruel. You would not live long enough to understand. Michael moved quickly. He shoved me hard toward the ground, throwing himself sideways. The shot rang out, deafening in the quiet night. Sparks flew as the bullet struck the metal gate. I scrambled on my hands and knees, clutching the journal. The grass was wet, clinging to my palms. Michael lunged at the taller man, grabbing for the gun. They struggled violently, fists and elbows striking in the dark. The second man charged toward me. His shadow loomed, his hand outstretched. I rolled onto my back and kicked with all the strength I had. My heel connected with his knee. He stumbled with a grunt, and I bolted to my feet. Run, Michael shouted. I ran. My lungs burned as I sprinted down the narrow alley beyond the gate. The journal weighed heavy in my arms, but I refused to let go. Behind me, I heard the sounds of fighting, shouting. Another gunshot. My heart twisted. Michael, was he part of this or protecting me? I did not know anymore. All I knew was that the journal had to be kept safe. I burst into the street, nearly colliding with the dark sedan, screeching to a halt. For a terrifying second, I thought it was another trap. Then the back door swung open, and a voice called out, "Get in, Emma, now." I froze. It was the same voice I had heard only through text messages until now. Urgent, commanding, familiar yet distorted by fear. I hesitated, torn between danger and salvation. But the sound of boots and shouts closing in behind me left no choice. I dove into the car, clutching the journal. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle roared forward. I twisted around, breathless, staring at the driver. A hood concealed most of their face, but I caught the faint outline of a scar along the jaw. "Who are you?" I demanded. The driver kept their eyes on the road. The only one who can keep you alive long enough to hear the truth. The city lights blurred past as the car sped through empty streets. My phone buzzed in my lap. Though the driver had said nothing, I picked it up. Another message. Do not look back. Tonight, everything changes. I swallowed hard, gripping the journal. Behind me, the echoes of the house under siege faded into the night. Ahead, the unknown stretched, dark and treacherous. Dark and treacherous. The truth was closer than ever. But so was the danger. Asterisk, the car sped through the night like a bullet, its engine growling as the driver wove between empty streets. My heart still hammered from the chaos at the house, but the silence in the vehicle was worse. I could hear every shallow breath I took, every thud of my pulse in my ears. The drivers who'd shadowed most of their face, but I saw the line of a scar catching faint glimmers of passing streetlights. My fingers dug into the leather journal, its weight both terrifying and reassuring. Finally, I forced the words out. You have been sending me messages. You knew I was in danger. You knew everything before it happened. Tell me who you are. The driver's jaw tightened. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then, slowly, they lowered the hood. The face that emerged from the shadows made my stomach drop. It was Daniel, my father's most trusted advisor, his business partner, his confidant, the man who had practically been part of our family since I was a child. He had disappeared months before my father's supposed death, and no one had given me a clear answer as to why. My breath caught. Daniel, his eyes flicked toward me, sharp and focused. Keep your voice down. We are not safe yet. I shook my head in disbelief. It was you. You sent the messages. You told me not to trust anyone. Why? What is happening? Why is my father fighting for his life while men with guns are tearing through our house? Daniel gripped the wheel tighter. Because your father uncovered something he should not have. He tried to keep it from you, from your brother, from your mother. He thought the less you knew, the safer you would be. But once the funeral started, once they tried to finish him, it became too late for secrecy. His words twisted in my mind. Finish him? You mean kill him, bury him alive? Daniel's eyes darkened. Yes. My chest tightened as I stared down at the journal. This book, they were searching for it. What is inside? Daniel glanced at the journal briefly before fixing his gaze back on the road. Proof. Records of every illegal transaction, every betrayal, every name involved. Your father had been documenting everything for years. He planned to bring it all down, but he underestimated how far they would go to silence him. My fingers trembled as I turned the journal over. Proof of corruption, betrayal, danger. Was this the weight that had always haunted my father in that locked study? But who? I demanded. Who is behind this? Tell me. Daniel's knuckles whitened around the wheel. You already know part of the answer. The implication landed like a stone in my stomach. My mother, my brother. I thought of the way my mother had stood in the hospital doorway, her voice calm and chilling. The way Michael had tried to stop me again and again. No, I whispered, shaking my head. You are telling me my own family is part of this. Daniel's voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to me with sorrow. Emma, your father loved you more than anything, but he was not blind. He knew the danger was closest to home. I pressed my hand against my mouth, my chest heaving. My family, my blood, could they really have betrayed him? Betrayed me? Before I could speak, Daniel swung the car sharply into a narrow lane, tires screeching against the pavement. I slammed against the door, clutching the journal tighter. What are you doing? I gasped. They are following us, he said. His voice was calm but hard. We cannot go straight to safety. We need to lose them first. I twisted around. Headlights glared from behind us, growing closer. The black car from earlier. My pulse spiked. Daniel accelerated, weaving through the streets with precision that spoke of practice, not panic. But the car behind us matched every turn, relentless. Hold on, Daniel warned. He veered suddenly into a construction site, gravel spraying beneath the tires. The car jolted violently as we tore across the uneven ground. Behind us, the black sedan followed, its engine roaring like a predator closing in. The journal nearly slipped from my hands. I clutched it to my chest, praying the pages inside would not be stained with my blood. Daniel slammed the brakes, spun the wheel, and the car skidded sideways, narrowly missing a stack of steel beams. The sedan tried to follow, but its tires screeched, losing traction. It crashed into a pile of scaffolding with a thunderous crash. Sparks flew, metal collapsed, and the vehicle's headlights flickered out. We sat in silence, both gasping for air. Daniel straightened the car and drove slowly back onto the road. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. You see how far they will go. This is only the beginning. I stared at him, my voice raw. Tell me everything. No more half-truths. No more warnings. Who are they? Daniel glanced at me, then at the journal. Your father discovered a network. Politicians, businessmen, even people within your own circle. They laundered money, silenced whistleblowers, and removed anyone who stood in their way. He documented it all here. That journal is not just a book. It is a weapon. I shivered. And my mother, my brother. His silence was more damning than any answer. We drove until the city lights faded, until the road narrowed into an old countryside path. Finally, Daniel pulled into a deserted farmhouse, its windows boarded, its roof sagging with age. He killed the engine and turned to me. This place is safe for now, but we cannot stay long. I hugged the journal tighter, staring at him with wide, desperate eyes. Daniel, why me? Why send the messages to me? Why not tell Michael? Why not go to the police? He leaned forward, his voice low. Because Michael cannot be trusted, and the police are already compromised. I needed someone with courage, someone who would not hesitate to act. That was you, Emma. It has always been you. His words both steadied and terrified me. The weight of responsibility pressed against my chest like a stone. I opened the journal, flipping through pages filled with names and accounts, each one a dagger aimed at powerful men. And then I saw it. A page marked with my mother's name. Next to it, a date, a transaction, a note scribbled in my father's hand. Confirmed. She knows. She is involved. The breath caught in my throat. Tears blurred my vision. My mother. The door of the farmhouse creaked. I looked up sharply, my heart leaping. Daniel tensed, reaching into his coat for something metallic. A figure stepped into the dim light of the doorway. The sight made my blood run cold. It was my mother. Her eyes locked onto the journal in my hands. Her voice was calm, too calm. Emma, hand me the book. Hand me the book. The days following the revelation about my father's texts moved like a slow current, pulling me deeper into dangerous waters. I had barely begun to process the possibility that he might still be alive when suspicion began tightening its grip on me. Everywhere I looked, questions demanded answers. If my father was alive, then why had his wife, my stepmother, stood at the pulpit during the funeral service with tears sliding down her cheeks? Why had she clutched my hand so tightly, whispering prayers for his soul? And more importantly, why had she been the one to insist that the coffin remain closed, claiming it was best for our memory of him? Those questions would not rest. They stalked me as I moved through my days, haunting my nights with fragmented dreams of dirt closing over a coffin, while a hand clawed upward from within. I could not silence them, so I decided to seek answers. I began by retracing every step of the funeral arrangements. The death certificate had been signed quickly, almost too quickly. The coroner had declared a heart attack, but the paperwork felt rushed, the language clinical and detached. I requested another copy from the office, pretending I had misplaced the original. The secretary who handed it to me looked uneasy, as though she knew something she could not say. I tucked it into my bag, but the chill of unease spread through my chest. At home that evening, I sat at the dining table with the document before me. The words blurred as I read them again and again. Heart failure. Time of death, 2:13 a.m. Witness, his wife, Eleanor. My eyes froze on her name. No hospital, staff, no second witness, only her signature, her testimony. I felt anger and dread rise together. If she had lied about this, then the entire narrative of his death was built on unstable ground. The phone buzzed on the table beside the papers, jolting me upright. Another message appeared from the unknown number. Trust no one in this house, especially her. I felt my skin prickle. I stared at the words, my throat dry, my heart hammering against my ribs. If this really was my father texting me, then he was pointing directly at Eleanor. I could not ignore it any longer. That night, I drove to her house. The driveway was dark, no lights on in the windows. I parked a short distance away and watched, the silence pressing against the glass of the car. Eventually, a light flickered on in the upstairs bedroom. I knew she was inside. I approached quietly, slipping along the path. My fingers trembled as I tried the back door. It was locked, of course, but the window in the kitchen was cracked open, perhaps for air. I pushed it higher, enough to slide inside. The house smelled of lavender and faint cigarette smoke. It was too still, too staged. On the counter were 2 wine glasses, one half full, as if someone had been interrupted crept down the hallway until I reached her office. The door was closed, but a faint glow leaked out beneath it. I pressed my ear against the wood and held my breath. Voices, not one, but 2, hers and a man's, low and urgent. You think the daughter suspects? The man asked. She's restless, but she has no proof, Eleanor replied, her tone sharp and dismissive. As long as the documents hold, she cannot challenge anything. My pulse roared in my ears. I pressed closer, straining to hear. And what about him? The man asked. There was a pause. Then her voice dropped lower. He's out of the way. He cannot interfere now. Soon, all of this will be settled, and no one will ever question it. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. She was speaking about my father. She was speaking about ensuring he never returned. The urge to burst through the door nearly overwhelmed me, but I forced myself back. I needed evidence, not rash confrontation. Quietly, I pulled out my phone and pressed record. Holding it near the crack at the bottom of the door, their voices continued, weaving a net of conspiracy that tightened with every sentence. Finally, Eleanor said, "Tomorrow I will move the remaining documents to the safe deposit box. Once that is secure, the estate will be untouchable." I backed away, clutching the phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought they would hear it. I slipped back through the kitchen and out the window, gulping the night air like a drowning person. Reaching the surface. Back in my car, I replayed the recording. The sound was muffled but clear enough. I had caught her words. Proof that she was hiding something, perhaps even orchestrating my father's disappearance. I drove home, unable to steady my thoughts. Had she buried him alive? Had she locked him away somewhere, controlling his every move? The possibilities circled like vultures. Dark and endless. Another buzz from my phone cut through my spiraling thoughts. You are close. Do not stop. The message made my hands shake. I pressed my palms against the steering wheel and forced a long breath. Whoever was sending these messages, they wanted me to expose the truth. The following morning, I went to the bank mentioned in her conversation. I waited until I saw Eleanor enter, a sleek black coat around her shoulders, her expression as composed as ever. She carried a leather folder tucked tightly under her arm. I stayed at a distance as she approached the counter and requested access to her deposit box. I could not hear the conversation, but I could see the way she clutched the folder, her knuckles pale. After several minutes, she disappeared with the clerk into the vault area. When she emerged, the folder was gone, her expression smoother, relieved. I followed her out, careful not to draw attention. My stomach knotted as I imagined what she had just secured inside that box. The death certificate, forged medical records, or perhaps even proof that my father was still alive, held somewhere out of sight. That night, as I sat in the dark of my living room, the weight of everything crashed down on me. My father might be alive. His wife was hiding something that tied directly to his disappearance, and I was the only one who had even the faintest pieces of the puzzle. The phone buzzed once more on the table. Beside me, she will try to silence you. Be ready. The words froze me in place. I stared at them until they blurred. Then I locked every door in the house and sat awake until dawn, knowing that whatever secret Eleanor carried, it was deadly. And I had just placed myself directly in her path. The warning on my phone replayed in my head long after dawn painted pale light across my windows. She will try to silence you. Be ready. Every instinct told me this was no longer just a mystery about my father's survival, but a battle against someone who would rather bury me along with the truth. I could not sit idle. My father's coffin had gone into the ground without me ever seeing his face. That fact gnawed at me until I felt consumed by it. If there was one place to start, it was his grave. If the coffin held nothing, or worse, if it held someone who was still alive when it was sealed, I had to know. By late afternoon, I was driving to the cemetery. The road stretched empty before me, each mile dragging me closer to a truth I might not be prepared to face. The gates creaked when I pushed them open, their iron bars standing tall against the sky streaked with gray. A chill wind slid through the trees, rattling the branches like skeletal fingers. I walked slowly, each step heavier than the last, until I stood before the fresh mound of earth. My father's name was etched into the headstone with cold precision, the dates carved as if to erase him from the world. I knelt down and pressed my hand against the soil, damp from morning rain. This cannot be the end, I whispered, though my voice trembled. The phone in my pocket vibrated sharply. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Another message lit the screen. Do not trust what lies beneath. Find proof before she moves it. I looked around quickly, heart racing, but no one was there. The graves stretched in silent rows, indifferent witnesses to my torment. Whoever was sending these messages knew exactly where I was, perhaps even watching me. That night, I made the decision. I would have the coffin exhumed. Officially, it would take court orders, permissions, endless red tape. I did not have that kind of time. If Eleanor was moving documents and silencing questions, then she might also move whatever was hidden here. I reached out to Marcus, an old friend of my father's who worked in construction. He owed my father a debt of gratitude for helping him through financial ruin years ago. When I explained, his voice cracked with disbelief, but he finally agreed. I will not ask questions, but if you are wrong, this will destroy you, he warned. We arranged to meet at midnight. The cemetery would be empty, and the darkness would cover our trespass. When the time came, the air was damp and heavy, the moon a thin silver blade in the sky. Marcus brought tools in the back of his truck. We moved quietly, carrying shovels and lanterns, our breaths forming pale clouds in the cold. My hands blistered quickly as we dug, the soil heavy and unyielding. My muscles screamed, but I forced myself onward, driven by the image of my father trapped below. Hours seemed to pass before the shovel struck wood. The dull thud rang through the night, freezing us both. We wiped the dirt from the lid, the coffin, pale and lifeless against the earth. Marcus looked at me, sweat streaking his forehead. "Are you sure?" he asked. I swallowed hard and nodded. "We have to see." We pried the lid open, the wood groaning as if resisting us. The lantern light spilled into the coffin, and I staggered back. It was empty. No body, no trace of my father. Only a folded blanket laid carefully across the bottom, as though to mimic the weight of a corpse. My stomach lurched, and I gripped the edge of the coffin to steady myself. Marcus swore under his breath. "This is madness. Where is he?" I shook my head, words failing me. My entire body trembled. The grave was a lie, the funeral a performance. My father had never been buried here. Before I could gather my thoughts, my phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, my fingers slick with sweat. "Now you see." She buried an empty box. I felt the ground sway beneath me. Someone knew everything, guiding me step by step. I could not decide whether to be grateful or terrified. Marcus closed the coffin lid quickly, his voice low and urgent. "We have to cover this before anyone notices." We shoveled the dirt back in, the silence between us thick with fear. When the mound was restored, we stood over it, our breaths ragged. I looked at the headstone, rage boiling in my chest. My father was out there somewhere, hidden from me, and Eleanor had orchestrated the lie. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Listen, if what you are saying is true, then this is bigger than us. You need to be careful. She will not let you get close." I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with fury. The next morning, I confronted Eleanor at her home. She opened the door with that same rehearsed expression of sorrow. "You should be healing, not tormenting yourself," she said softly. I forced a steady tone. "I went to the cemetery last night." For the first time, her face faltered. Flicker of something cold passed through her eyes before she masked it again. "You should not linger at graves," she said. "There is nothing in that coffin," I said firmly, stepping closer. "You lied to everyone." Her lips tightened, her composure cracking like glass under pressure. "You should not say things you cannot prove," she whispered, though the edge in her voice was sharp enough to cut. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I will find him, and when I do, everything you built will crumble." Her eyes hardened. For a moment, we stood in silence, the air charged with unspoken war. Then she stepped back and closed the door with a slow, deliberate click. That night, I received another message. "She knows you discovered the grave. She will act soon. Be vigilant." I stared at the screen, my chest tight. The war had shifted. Eleanor was no longer pretending. She knew I was after her, and now every step forward would carry the weight of danger. But the coffin had been empty, and that single truth gave me more strength than fear. My father was alive, and I would not stop until I found him. The empty grave never left my mind. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the coffin lid lifting, the lantern's glow spilling over nothing but a folded blanket. The memory of that hollow space struck deeper than grief ever had, because it carried the certainty that my father's fate was not sealed in death but trapped in a conspiracy. I had only begun to unravel. I tried to focus on ordinary routines, but everything had shifted. My steps felt heavier, my breaths sharper. Even in the quiet of my own home, I could not shake the sense that I was being watched. Curtains drawn tight still let in shadows that seemed to linger too long. The hum of my refrigerator became the whisper of voices I could not catch. I moved through each day with my senses on edge, expecting Eleanor to strike. The phone's buzz pierced the silence late one evening, while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the death certificate again. Another message appeared. "You must move quickly. She will erase him if you hesitate." I read the words over and over, my hands tightening around the phone. If Eleanor was preparing to make her final move, then I had to be faster. But how could I find a man hidden so completely that even his funeral had been staged? I decided to begin where Eleanor's mask had slipped. She mentioned a safe deposit box, one she had already visited. If she had placed incriminating documents there, then I needed access. It would be dangerous, but the alternative was living in the dark while she tightened her grip. The following day, I went to the bank again. I waited until Eleanor left, her heels clicking across the marble floor with infuriating calm. I approached the same clerk she had spoken to, a young man with tired eyes. I forced my voice into a steady tone. "I am Eleanor's daughter-in-law. She asked me to retrieve something from her box, but she was rushed this morning." His eyes flickered with uncertainty. I am afraid access is restricted to her only. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Listen carefully. She has hidden things that do not belong to her. If she succeeds, it will destroy my family. I need to know what is in that box. He swallowed hard, clearly torn. I could lose my job. I placed my hand gently on the counter, my voice soft but urgent, and I could lose my father. Please. For a moment, silence stretched. Then he glanced around quickly and whispered, tomorrow night, after closing, be here at 9. I nodded, my chest tight with both relief and fear. That night, my phone buzzed again. You are walking into danger, but the truth waits there. The message was both warning and encouragement. I barely slept, my mind racing with images of what I might find, documents proving Eleanor's lies, or perhaps even evidence of where my father was kept. When the next evening came, I arrived at the bank as instructed. The clerk met me at the side door, his nervousness palpable. He led me through dim hallways until we reached the vault. The air was cold and sterile, the walls lined with countless boxes holding secrets no one dared speak aloud. He unlocked Eleanor's box and slid it onto the table. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside lay a stack of envelopes bound with twine, a small black notebook, and a key with no tag. I opened the notebook first. The pages were filled with meticulous notes in Eleanor's handwriting, dates, times, and cryptic references to deliveries, visits, and containment. My stomach knotted tighter with every line. One entry froze me. March 14th, he is restless. Must ensure silence until all assets transfer. March 14th was 2 days before his supposed death. I opened one of the envelopes. Inside was a forged medical report declaring my father deceased due to cardiac failure, complete with a falsified physician's signature. Another envelope contained legal documents transferring property rights and financial accounts to Eleanor. Each paper confirmed the scale of her deception. The key at the bottom gleamed under the vault light, small but heavy in my palm. I had no idea what it unlocked, but its presence in this box meant it was tied to something critical. Suddenly, the clerk hissed, someone is coming. We shoved everything back into the box, but I slipped the notebook into my bag before closing it. My heart thundered as footsteps echoed down the corridor. The clerk pushed me toward a side exit. Go now, he whispered, his face pale. I slipped into the night just as another employee entered the vault area. My pulse still raced as I drove away, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. At home, I spread the notebook open on the table, tracing each word with trembling fingers. The entries painted a picture of control, deceit, and confinement. Eleanor had not only lied about my father's death but had documented her manipulation of his life in cold detail. One entry stood out. March 18th, transport successful. Location secured. No further interference expected. March 18th was the very day of the funeral. While mourners wept over an empty coffin, she had moved him somewhere hidden. The phone buzzed. You hold the map now. Follow the key. I stared at the words, then at the key lying beside the notebook. My father was alive, locked away, and this key was the thread that could lead me to him. But Eleanor was watching me. I felt it in the silence outside my windows, in the subtle movements of shadows on my street. That night, as I tried to sleep, I heard the faintest creak on my porch. I froze, straining to listen. Slow footsteps moved across the wood, then silence. I did not dare rise or draw the curtains. My body remained rigid until dawn, when the first light revealed faint muddy footprints leading away from my door. She was no longer hiding her intent. The walls were closing in. I gripped the notebook and the key with renewed resolve. Eleanor could follow, threaten, and terrify me all she wanted. But I would not stop, not until I unlocked the door behind which my father waited. The key sat on the table before me, gleaming under the faint glow of the lamp. It was small, brass, worn at the edges, but it pulsed with a weight far heavier than its size. Somewhere, it opened the lock. Somewhere, it held the final barrier between me and my father. I flipped through Eleanor's notebook again, hunting for clues. The entries were written with precision, but one page carried the faintest hint of a smudge beside the words storage facility. My breath caught. She had been careful, but not perfect. A storage facility would need a key. The following morning, I began searching. There were dozens of storage facilities across the city, each with rows of units and identical locks. I drove past one after another, showing the key to attendants, asking questions under the pretense of searching for a missing rental. Most shook their heads, but at the fifth location, an old manager leaned forward, squinting at the key. "That's one of ours," he said, pointing toward the far end of the lot. "Units in the older section use that style. Not many left now." My chest tightened. I thanked him quickly and walked toward the stretch of weathered doors. The key felt heavy in my hand, my fingers slick with sweat. Each step forward was weighted with dread and hope. Unit 47, the number stood crooked on the metal, faded by years of rain. I inserted the key, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every other sound. The lock turned with a click that felt like thunder in my ears. I lifted the door. The metal groaned as it rolled upward, revealing darkness inside. I raised my flashlight, its beam cutting through the stale air. At first, all I saw were stacks of crates and old furniture covered with sheets. My stomach dropped with disappointment, but then a sound reached me, faint, ragged breathing. I swung the light toward the corner. There, chained to a chair, sat my father. His hair was disheveled, his skin pale, but his eyes were alive, wide with shock as the light hit him. "Father," I whispered, rushing forward. His lips trembled. "You came." I dropped to my knees, fumbling with the chains. My hands shook so badly I could barely work the locks. He reached out, touching my face with trembling fingers. "She said no one would find me," he whispered hoarsely. "She said I would die here." Tears blurred my vision, but I forced the chains loose one by one. As the last lock fell away, he collapsed into my arms, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. The sound of footsteps outside shattered the fragile moment. My head snapped up, fear flooding me. The metal door slammed down with a violent crash, plunging us into darkness. A voice echoed through the storage unit, cold and sharp. "You should have stayed away." Eleanor. Her silhouette appeared against the sliver of light from the edges of the door. She held something in her hand that gleamed under the faint glow, a knife. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "I had control. I had the estate, and he was out of the way. No one needed to know." I pulled my father behind me, my body trembling but resolute. "You locked him in here like an animal. You faked his death. You buried an empty coffin. All of it ends now." She laughed bitterly. "Do you think anyone will believe you? You broke into a grave. You stole from a bank vault. You trespassed. Here. The evidence is mine. The story is mine." I felt for my phone in my pocket, pressing the record button without her noticing. "You cannot erase this," I said firmly. "You just admitted everything." Her eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, the knife catching the light. "Then you leave me no choice." Before she could strike, the door burst open. Marcus charged in, wielding a crowbar, his face fierce. He had followed me, refusing to let me confront this danger. Alone. Eleanor spun toward him, but Marcus swung, knocking the knife from her hand. It clattered to the floor as she screamed in rage. I pulled my father up, supporting his weight, while Marcus restrained her. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone at the facility must have called after hearing the struggle. Within minutes, officers stormed the unit, dragging Eleanor away as she spat curses and promises of revenge. I handed them the notebook, my phone, and the forged documents I had taken. The officers listened, their expressions grim. One of them turned to me. "This will hold in court. She will not escape this time." My father leaned against me, his strength slowly returning. He looked into my eyes, tears streaking his face. "You saved me." I shook my head, holding him tightly. "You fought to stay alive. I only followed the trail you left." The officers helped us outside, the night air cool and fresh against my skin. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight begin to lift from my chest. The stars above shimmered like distant lanterns guiding us home. Days later, my father sat in my living room, wrapped in a blanket, sipping warm tea. His voice was still weak, but his eyes burned with gratitude and determination. "She wanted everything," he said softly. "The money, the property, the freedom to live without me standing in her way. But she underestimated the bond between." Bafta reached for his hand. "She underestimated the truth." The trial that followed was long and grueling. Eleanor's lies were stripped bare piece by piece. The forged documents, the empty grave, the recordings, the testimony from the bank clerk. Each revelation painted her as the architect of cruelty and deception. When the verdict was reached on all counts, my father gripped my hand with strength that had returned to him at last. The story spread quickly, whispered through neighborhoods, and shared across headlines. People could not believe a wife had buried an empty coffin while her husband lived in chains. They could not fathom the depths of her betrayal or the resilience that carried us through. But for me, the story was not about the scandal or the whispers. It was about the moment my father's eyes met mine in that dark storage unit. The moment life pushed back against the grave that had tried to claim him. Now, as I sit by his side, I know the battle is over. The shadows have lifted, the truth has won, and the bond between us has been forged stronger than ever. My father is alive, and nothing Eleanor could ever do will take that away again.